The Time Ponies and the Cutie Mark Thief vs. the Queen of Hearts. Written and read by My Name is R. Chapter 18. Canterlot Climax. But if day can turn to night, and the darkness turn to light. Hold it! No Ling is allowed to feed on the prisoners until further notice. I don't care what proof you might have that you were allowed to, it's a new order since some of the purple freaks' toys broke out, apparently with the help of a traitor. So for now, buzz off! The leader of the 6 guards protecting the barracks was the most abrasive changeling Starlight had met so far, which was good, since if he'd been nice like the first sentry, she would have felt worse for what they were about to do. Starlight froze 3 of them in a crystal. Perfect zapped a 4th with her sleeping spell, and Fluttershy leapt forth to stab the leader in the chest. Starlight averted her gaze, not entirely comfortable with the lengths that her team had to go to. Unfortunately, the last one managed to get a shot off before Inky took him down. It went sailing straight toward Sandstorm, who barely managed to twist out of the way. Starlight took a deep breath, and Inky faced every pony. Okay, now let's clean this mess up before... Boom! They all turned back, seeing the beautiful firework display caused by the lone shot. Change of plans! Every pony inside! Now! Starlight called out, pulling open the doors and dashing inside. Once they were all inside, Pinky quickly nailed some boards over the door to keep the changelings outside. Dropping the illusion, Starlight trotted to the area where the cocooned ponies were being held, the others close behind. She levitated Applejack, Rarity, and Rainbow Dash over to herself, with Fluttershy and Pinkie Pie joining her. While the others got to work freeing every other captive in the building, Starlight released the 3 bearers. Applejack came out swinging, and Starlight was glad that they were all 3 standing several paces back. Rainbow fell to the ground, before quickly shaking herself off and standing up. Rarity fell out of the cocoon and landed gracefully on her hooves. Ow! What happened? Asked Rainbow Dash. It looks like a rescue, although I would wager that the war is hardly over, said Rarity. Do you have an extraction lined up, or have things already fallen apart? We sorta have a plan, but it's not to leave. We're gonna use the elements of harmony and to make all the meanie changelings run away, Pinky answered. Quick, see if you can wake up the rocks of destiny. Pinky pulled the 3 dormant elements out of her mane, even though Starlight was certain they were still in the basement back home. And how are we supposed to wake up a bunch of rocks? Applejack asked. Pinky hoofed them over to a rather confused Rarity. Well, Rarity's the element of generosity, so maybe she should share them. Pinky, I don't think that's quite how they work, Fluttershy admonished. Fluttershy? Rainbow shouted. Is that really you? Fluttershy nodded and smiled. Yes, Rainbow. It's good to see you again. Rainbow looked down. I'm sorry that you had to come here. What? Well, I never wanted you to end up in the thick of everything. You were always trying to be nice to every pony, and I never wanted you to have to get involved in this mess. She laughed softly. Guess I failed at that, too. Slowly, one of the elements rolled across the floor and bumped into Rainbow's leg. Ooh, it looks like that one likes you, Pinky pointed out. What? No! Shoo, go find some pony better. Rainbow tried to shove the ball away, only for it to bounce off a wall and roll back, coming to a stop in front of her. Rainbow, I know you tried, Fluttershy said softly, but no pony's perfect, and the war is everywhere in Equestria. Then I should have stopped it, Rainbow shouted back. Whatever it took to keep my friend from having to face this nightmare. The orb started hovering and glowing red. It's not about success. It's about your determination to stand up for your friends, no matter what, Starlight observed. And whether you think you're worthy or not, you are the bearer of loyalty. Well, I don't see any way to demonstrate my generosity beyond what I've already done, Rarity said. I already threw everything I had into this war, and any pony would fight to help a group, including themselves. It's just common sense, really. A second orb hovered over to before Rarity, this one glowing a pale blue, nearly white. Apparently, I don't have to. Every pony looked at Applejack. Oh, shucks. I ain't got the tiniest sliver of an idea what's going on. One day I'm tending the crops, then the bugs went and got us all, and now I'm apparently one of 3 chosen heroes, and we gotta save the world by being loyal and generous and stuff? Plus, I see a changeling over there, helping break folks out of cocoons, so I reckon I don't know anything right now. The final element rose before her, emanating a soft orange glow. I guess that's enough? The 3 elements all began to glow brighter, hiding the transformation into their awakened forms. That's great, but we're still missing the last one, Driver pointed out. Well, who else do we need? Rainbow called. If you tell me where they are, I can find them and bring them back faster than you can say Wonderbolt's Academy. She smirked and lifted off and began hovering halfway up the room. Well, it isn't finding them that's the hard part, Inky began. The real problem is that she's working for the enemy. Dear, do you mean to say that the final pony you need to work on these elements of harmony, which you still have not adequately explained, is Twilight Sparkle? Rarity asked. I know, things aren't going like they're supposed to, Starlight admitted. I'm trying really hard to fix things without a lot of ponies dying. And I know it's a long shot, but I really hope that we can find a way to get the elements to work. Heh, I don't know who you ponies are, but I can tell this is gonna be awesome, Rainbow observed. Whatever long shot crazy plan you've got, count me in. You have infiltrated the changeling's strongest position in Equestria and freed dozens of ponies. I am confident that together we can find a way to make this work, Rarity added. Though I would still like to know what we're making work. I understand that can wait until we have more time. That's right. Together, we've got this, shouted Pinky, slipping a hoof over Starlight. Fluttershy nodded. Together, we will reclaim what we have lost. Together, we will rise once more. Applejack swallowed hard and stared at the ground. I reckon it's about time that some ponies showed them varmints a thing or two about messing with family. She nodded. Whatever we're gonna do, I'm in. Starlight looked at every pony gathered together before her. Many were looking to her for guidance. Some were racking their brains, alone or in groups, for any possible way to make the elements work without Twilight. Some of these ponies were here because they wanted to make things better, and others were just in the wrong spot at the wrong time. But in the end, they were all here because of her mistakes and hubris. She took a deep breath and let it out. Together, they would find a way to make this better. She didn't think she could fix her past mistakes all on her own, but together, they might just make it. The final element began to glow, and Starlight stepped before it. As the glow faded, she saw that it had not become a necklace, as the others had. Instead, it had become a magenta star, free of any golden frame. Starlight was fairly certain that it was the same shape as the main part of Twilight's cutie mark. All right, woohoo! Minuet shouted. Rainbow laser time! Well, the changelings are almost done breaking down the front door, so why don't we see what these elements can do, suggested Inky. Starlight trotted into the entryway of the barracks, followed by the others. She fell into a ready stance, element of magic by her side, and the others formed a line. Pinky, Fluttershy, and Rainbow Dash stood to her right, while Rarity and Applejack stood to her left. Sandstorm and Derpy hovered above, while the rest of her new friends and the ponies they had just rescued stood behind them, ready to fight if the elements didn't work. If I remember right, to use the elements, all you need to do is focus, began Minuet. Think about why you need to do this, and about your friends by your side. I don't know if that's needed, or just how Pinky does it, but that's a good place to start. They all watched as the doors began to buckle, wooden crossboards cracking down the middle, or popping loose from the wall. Excuse me, but while we're waiting for the changelings to break down the door to get to us, do you think you could fill us in on what these elements are going to do? Rarity asked. Make a rainbow laser that fixes stuff. How, precisely? I don't know. It's different each time. Turning ponies to stone, sending them to the moon, turning them not evil, that sort of thing. Alright, I'm gonna just step out for a bit. Call me if the elements don't work, or when you're done with them, called Inky as a portal opened nearby. What? Why? Starlight asked. Because you're trying to use an unknown quantity to zap a bunch of changelings, and I don't want to spend the next 1,000 years as a lawn ornament. Don't worry, you're not evil, and the elements only hurt evil things, Derpy reassured. We don't know if that's a design feature, or just because it's who they're pointed at. I'm sorry, but I can't help you here. With this, Inky stepped into the portal, and after a moment, it shut behind her. Finally, the last board gave out, and the doors flung open, revealing dozens of changelings standing outside. Stand back! Pinky shouted at them. We're about to rock your world! She held her bejeweled necklace toward the changelings, who had paused to look at them. Oh, please tell me that was not what I think it was, asked one changeling in the front row. Pretty sure it was, muttered one of their neighbors. We will never break under your lame puns, the first shouted. Yeah, you'll never erode our will with rock jokes, a third in the second row agreed. The other changelings all stared at him. Really? Asked the first. You just had to say it. It was just dangling there. Someling had to. While the changelings were busy arguing about puns, Starlight was trying desperately to activate the element of magic. She tried focusing as Minuet suggested, and it started to glow, but then it stalled out. No matter how hard she focused, all it did was glow. She lifted it higher, and she felt a tug on her magic. At first she froze, but it didn't feel like an attack. It felt more like some pony was asking her permission to use her magic for a ritual. She decided to trust the element, and just poured as much magic into it as she could, a shapeless wave of pure magic for the element of magic to use as it would. The other 5 bearers slowly levitated off the floor, enveloped in a white glow of the elements as they floated close, closing ranks. A rainbow beam shot forth into the swarm of changelings, and then the white glow was all Starlight could see. If a Pegasus were to have flown over the city, they would have bore witness to a truly magnificent scene. Outside the barracks, a rainbow appeared, hitting roughly a troop of changelings, but it didn't stop there. Rather, it split into several rainbows that continued their flight. Each one flew towards other changelings, and when they hit, sometimes they would stop, and sometimes they would split once more. In under a minute, the changelings all over Canterlot had been touched by the mysterious rainbow. The whole city went from bustling to a ghost town in one wave. Rainbow Dash groaned, sitting up and rubbing her skull. Oh, my head! Pinky rolled over from her back, while Applejack sat up as well, looking around at the other bearers. Every pony okay? I do believe so, answered Rarity. But what in Equestria happened to them? She pointed her hoof at the changelings, most of whom were now brightly colored and lacking their distinctive hold aesthetic. The changelings hadn't fared any better from magical rainbow hangovers than the element bearers. Even those who hadn't transformed were just now recovering from an unknown time passed out. Ugh, I always said that ponies were offensively colorful, but I didn't think they would actually attack us with a rainbow, said an angry changeling in the front row. He had red fins and purple eyes and wings. All right, form up, and let's show those weaklings what a real attack looks like. He turned behind him and saw the state of the other changelings. What? He turned back to the barracks. What did you do to us? He roared. I have no idea, Starlight admitted. Well, whatever you did, we'll fix it after we take you out. Soldiers, take your proper forms and get back into formation. Wait! A voice called out from the space between them. Every pony and every ling looked up to see Inky in changeling form, but wearing her iconic vest. You don't have to fight. I'm certain that if you step back and try to work something out with the ponies, we can come to an agreement." "Oh yeah?" sneered the lead changeling. Starlight thought that it was probably Pharynx. "And why would we want to settle for that when we can just take all their love?" "Because you're losing," Inky answered. "That you lost the queen was bad enough, but by now the pony princesses have been released. In a matter of months, you'll be forced back into hiding at best. Then we'll take our prisoners back to the hive, where no pony could hope to stand against us. We will rebuild and..." He whipped around to the green changeling that had just cleared her throat. "What is it?" he growled. "Well, it appears that along with the change of colors, we are no longer hungry. We don't have to fight anymore." "So what? You want to stop fighting as soon as your bellies are full?" "Well, that was what we were fighting for," the green changeling answered. "And what about dominating the ponies? If we let them recover, they'll retaliate." "Well, she did just offer to make peace." "Never!" shouted Pharynx. "Timble, report for misconduct. The rest of you, form up!" The 3 other changelings in the group that hadn't transformed did as ordered, but most of them just stayed where they were. "Yeah, most of us don't really want to fight," said one. Pharynx looked from his 3 supporters to the dozens of ponies arrayed against them. He snarled and flew off, taking his supporters with him. "Well, I reckon that didn't go too bad," Applejack said, breathing a sigh of relief. After a few hours of confusion and chaos, the changelings who had been transformed all, basically unanimously, decided that since they didn't have to feed on ponies anymore, and their current queen wasn't around to force them into it, they would cease their war on the ponies of Equestria. The ponies, however, were not so easily convinced to bury the hatchet. Cadence, in particular, led the newly reformed Anti-Changeling Holdouts of Equestria, or AIC, a group lobbying for the banishment of hive citizens from Equestria entirely. There were also many ponies who were willing to accept changelings in Equestria, but demanded the return of Canterlot to pony hooves. Just about all of the nobility were in one or the other of these 2 camps, but a few, such as Fancy Pants, had joined with Celestia in a bid to work out a peaceful exchange in which the changelings would keep Canterlot, and in return they would return all the ponies still held captive there. It took several weeks, but eventually Celestia and her supporters managed to find a set of compromises and promises that satisfied both the citizenry of Equestria and the changelings, led by the ex-infiltration instructor Timble. Canterlot was to be the new Hive of Equestria's capital, if a country of but one city could call it their capital. Meanwhile, Celestia declared that Manhattan would be made into the new capital of Equestria. And so began a new era in Equestria, land of the Daybringer. And as the seasons returned, into the darkness shone light for the first time in ages. And the darkness was displeased. Author's note. Sorry about the awkward cutoff, but this felt like a definite climax, and the action wouldn't be at a better break-off point for a while. The next book will give more information about some of what happened at the end there, but I don't plan on actually writing out the political movements in detail. Not my thing, politics. Yeah. Looking back on it, I'm not particularly pleased with how I handled Applejack in particular's element. Almost as much of a letdown as it was in canon. Seriously, Applejack, I understand, it's a little tricky of one to work out quickly. I do have plans that'll work out better for the next world. This one was, even in the storyboarding, it had a little bit of a question mark there at the very end. But the second one is much more solidly defined. I hope you enjoyed. I certainly had fun writing it. It's been my largest work ever. And I fully plan on continuing it, and hopefully I'll make another reading of the second book later, but not soon. I hope you all enjoyed, and I wish you all a pleasant time. Goodbye, everyone.